So we back again today, another Happy Hour Friday with the MoZo Show. So today we gonna stay on relationships, and we're gonna be talking about interracial dating.
All right.
All right. So we got Gary Bell. He's gonna be our guest today. He's 5.5 years in on an interracial relationship. Gary,
So he's an expert. He's an expert by now.
I guess something like an expert. We gonna see in a minute. But yeah. Gary, I'm just gonna have you introduce yourself. Just tell us a little bit about your history just with interracial relationships, and just introduce yourself.
My name is Gary Bell, and I've been in my current relationship for about 5.5 years. It's the only interracial relationship I've ever been in. We started out as friends, and then kind of progressed to the stage that we're at now.
Okay, so in your past relationships, Gary, I mean, what was it? What made you come to the decision? I know, just in our culture a lot, when you're talking about criticism from, people in our own culture or even other women of our race, sometimes was it hard for you to come to the decision to start an interracial relationship?
Not at all. I mean, I think it depends upon like the type of person that you are. I know with me, I'm very much a character person, meaning that the people that I hang out with or associate with are of good character, and that to me weighs a lot more than other things. So it's
Okay.
the same way with relationships that this is someone who I felt like she was of good character as a human being. She's a good friend, and she was someone who, to me, the best way to judge somebody is to see how they treat others, not necessarily you yourself. Like you don't really want to judge someone by strictly how they treat you, but to see how they treat their family and their friends. And if they treat them well, then when they feel that way about you, you'll get that good treatment eventually too.
Okay, so it wasn't like you were tired of dating black girls or anything like that. I mean, was that part of it, or it just so happened that y'all clicked?
More so that it happened that we clicked.
More so.
More so. I mean, I think with with black women, my experience had been that at the age that I was at, and this is early 20s, they were attracted to athletes, your thugs, and like what I would call your swag guys. So this maybe they're not an athlete or a thug, but they dress really well and they're very popular. I really didn't fit in any one of those buckets. I was just kind of a an average dude. So I like to play sports, but I wasn't an athlete, and I've had some issues in my past, but I'm not a thug. So for me, I didn't fit in that bucket. And where I was at, I'm in Southwest Florida, and the black woman that I would run into would be in college, but I started college late, so they're about 4 or 5 years younger than me on
Okay.
that. And so that was also an issue about who you are around too. So I wasn't around someone that I could relate to as far as a background thing. I was just around people who we clicked on the basis of like I said, character, humor, mutual interest, but not necessarily background ethnicity.
Okay. And so basically, it was a lot of from your experience, it was a lot of black women, decided to choose a mate or someone like that based off of status.
To me,
to you,
in
right?
my opinion,
In
yeah,
your
that's
opinion,
what it
in
looked
your
like to me.
situation. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Um. So when you're talking about, I know some of the things you wanted to talk about when I spoke with you earlier before we got on the podcast today, the cultural differences.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me about some of the cultural differences that you found that was different from past relationships that you may have had within your race than the relationship that you're in now.
But what I'm curious about before you go into that, Gary, is what culture is your girl from? Like what race is she? And if you don't mind saying, and where did she grow up? Or like what type of environment did she grow up in?
She's Sicilian. She was born in New York, and then she moved to Florida when she was 5. So I met her in Florida. She was 19 when I met her. So she pretty much spent the majority of her childhood in Florida, but visiting New York.
Okay.
And all her family's on Long Island. Or the majority of her family's on Long Island. She has some family that's like 10 minutes from my mom.
Okay, so talk more about the cultural difference. That's something that you had mentioned to us before.
Well, yeah, I think, and when I say culture, it may not necessarily be nationality, but with her, she grew up, both parents. She had a younger brother, plenty of family members, a plethora of people around at all times. So she's very social, extroverted. Her and her family likes to do everything in groups. Group think goes on a lot. A lot of them, they like the same shows. They have the same opinions politically. They view people the same way. There's a lot of similarities there, slight differences. Whereas with me, I grew up, it was just me and my mom. My dad wasn't really around like that. And because of that, I was, more or less isolated from his side of the family. And my mother's siblings were 30 years older than me. So I grew up very much one on one, and so I thrive in one on one situations, and I don't really like big groups of big families. So the cultural differences start to really present themselves when family is extremely important to her. Big Italian family, they're big on food. 30, 40 people sitting down and eating together, and she might on a typical Sunday she might call 8 or 9 separate family members. She might FaceTime with her family 4 times on a Sunday, maybe 3 times on a regular weekday. And for me, that's excessive. To me, it's like, yo, I grew up with my mom and I love my mom and I talk to my mom sparingly throughout the week. I don't have 40 or 50 people that I like to keep up with. So that the cultural differences with us are there a lot.
Okay, now let me ask you this. I mean, because when you talk about the cultural differences, like you said, from how you guys are raised and the family structure and everything like that, did you find that, bringing in you guys, racially cultural differences as well, do you find it hard to adapt to that? Because now, not only do you have to adapt to, okay, from me, I'm not really, a person that's around a lot of family members and things like that. I have to go from that to being around a lot of people and a lot of family members and doing it often. And then did you find that, you guys really didn't have that much in common, so it may be harder to do that than if you were with somebody of your own race?
I think with me, I'm a natural introvert, period. I think there are some things that are probably barriers because they're Italian, so they're into baseball. I hate baseball. Or her cousins are into, riding the quads and hunting. And for most black people, we're into the NBA, and they don't like the NBA. So,
wow, okay.
So you can't talk about Bron,
right,
is what you're telling me. You
can't. Not in
can't.
depth. It can be a very broad conversation. Like I can have a broad baseball, like, oh, the Tigers are doing well. They're in first place. But that's all I know. I don't know, more than 2 or 3 players on the Tigers. So that part of it is one thing. And then secondly, I'm on guard because I feel like, not only am I new to the family, but I also feel like everything that I say or do is I feel like there's someone watching me or scrutinizing me. And that can be reality or not. It could just be me and my paranoia, or it could be some legitimacy there. But I feel that, let me keep my words short and sweet. Let me not open up too much of my personality because there might be some things that are lost in translation, things that I find funny that are not funny to Italians. And I've caught them saying or wanting to say black jokes, stop in the middle of it because they forget. Like, oh, maybe I won't say that joke.
Right.
So you feel respected when they stop? Like, they're in the middle of telling a joke. You can feel what the punchline is going to be, but they stop on your behalf. You feel like, okay, that's out of respect, and that makes you feel more comfortable.
Or do you get a Sam Jackson side eye?
Yeah, like, do you get mad about it? What happened?
It's a little of both. Part of me feels like I want you to be 100 with me so I can be 100 with you. If that doesn't happen, then what are we doing here? We're just we have this very, very surface level relationship, which I'm not comfortable with. So I would rather them be able to crack on black people as long as I can crack on Italians, and we have a mutual respect that, hey, I know you're not a racist, I'm not a racist, but we can just joke and just talk. Then I'm with that. But then the other part of me feels like, well, I don't know you like that yet, and I'm
Right.
glad that you do stop yourself because in case you do say something offensive, just because I love my fiance won't prevent me from reacting in the way that I normally would react. You know what I'm
Ooh, and
saying?
keeping it real goes wrong.
Yeah, yeah. So it's mixed. It's mixed right now.
Okay, so we're talking about segueing into dealing with family because that was something that something else that you also wanted to talk about. So I know you talked about some of her family from New York and dealing with them on, I guess when you visited their family and stuff like that. But also, if you could talk to me about dealing with, her immediate family, because that's somebody who you probably have the most contact with out of her family would be her parents and any siblings that she has, correct?
Yeah.
So how was that interaction, and how have you found that interaction through the process of your relationship?
Well, we started as friends like 8 years ago is when we met. So I would come over to her house as a friend, and I would get to know, excuse me, I would get to know her brother. And at the time, he was in high school playing football, so he would just come home and not really say a whole lot. And we got to know, I would get to know her parents, and then as time went on, I would go to like the Christmas parties over the house, or we would just come over, hang out, and kick it. Now, her mother and I clicked pretty soon, and the dad is very accomplished, and he's an accountant. He's very accomplished, and their home is sizable. So, he would talk, and I would feel like some of me I looked up to his success and what he had accomplished, but I'm sure some part of me was somewhat intimidated by his success and what he thought of me. But as time has gone on, this is years down the road, we we were good. We had good relationship up until maybe about 2 years ago. And what happened was that uh, my fiance, she went to go move out of her parents' home because she was 25 years old about that time. She went to go move out, and after about 4 months, she got let go of her job. When she went to go move back in with her father, he made a stance to say, uh, "You can't be with me. You can't live here with me and date him." So, so at that time,
That's a bold statement.
That is a bold statement.
That's a bold statement. That's okay.
yeah. So at that time, to me, that's okay. Now, prior to that, I'm skipping ahead of myself a little bit, but prior to that, I had a conversation with him to say, "Hey, I want to date your daughter," and he said, "Well, I really want you to stay with your own people. We'll stay with our own people." And I'm not with that at all. So he was honest up front and told me that, and I was kind of shocked because she told me he
You
was
said
saying
I
that.
was shocked.
Yeah, I was shocked.
So were you mad? I mean, what did you? How do you respond to something like that? He sits you down at the kitchen table and just say that to your face. So how do you? I mean, how did you digest that and just move on?
Well, the situation was such that I've been talking to her about, hey, I want to go talk to your dad. She was like, well, she was apprehensive, like, it's not going to go well. And I'm telling her, like, look, he's not what you think he is. I've been knowing this guy for years. I don't know why I thought that I somehow had the inside track on her dad, but I called him, and he was at home alone. And I said, hey, can I come and talk to you? So I went and talked to him. We talked for about an hour. So when he told me that, I was shocked. I was somewhat hurt. I was embarrassed because I felt, because she told me it was like that, and I'm like, man, this entire time I'm thinking that we're cool, and really, I don't, and really I'm just cool to a certain extent, and his thing was it was really he said something to the effect of, um, I'm a lot more tolerant than my dad. My dad wouldn't let black people in the house.
Ooh.
It wouldn't go into some other things. So um, I kind of felt, like I was embarrassed because I thought, you think you know someone a little bit better than that. So that happened. I didn't go over there for obviously several months. And
now let me ask you let me ask you this, Gary. Let me ask you this, man. I know you probably have some people that's listening that says, okay, you're dating this Italian woman
mm-hmm.
whose parents tell you need to stay with your own people.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, obviously you made the decision to continue dating her. Why? I guess why do you think that you didn't have the feeling of, okay, well, maybe I should stay with my own people because, no, I'm not going to deal with this. I don't have to deal with this.
Well, I took his advice.
Okay.
Now, we were not dating at the time. We were friends. I took his advice. The very next day, I joined the Black Student Alliance at school.
The very next day?
Very next day, because you got to make lemonade. Right? You got to make lemonade. So I joined the Black Student Alliance, start going to the parties, start hanging out with all the Kappas and stuff that were on campus. And prior to that, I was pretty much by myself where I would hang out with Rosie's friends. So once I started kicking it with everybody there, I felt a lot better about myself because I felt like I had a group of friends that I could go and kick it with who I was cut from that same cloth. But ultimately, Rosie and I were friends first. So even though I stepped to her dad, and asked, let him know my intentions to date her, but I still felt like, even if that was on hold, and even though partially I was enjoying myself with the people I was kicking it with at school, and I was really in no real rush to get into a committed relationship, but I still felt like at the end of the day, this was a friend. This was someone who, when I was sick, they would come over and take care of me. This is someone who I could talk to and tell things that I couldn't tell other people. And this is someone who genuinely had a very big heart, just was a loving, caring person. This was someone who I did not want to just let go of in my life, because even though I was kicking it with people on campus, these were party friends. They weren't problems.
They weren't friends. And and what's interesting to me that you said that you go in depth about you guys' I guess relationship outside of being boyfriend, girlfriend, or wherever it was or wanted to be at the time, is that a lot of people try to say, oh, I'm in this interracial relationship and I don't see color and I just see the person, and it kind of comes across as that's what you see in her. It's not necessarily you're white, I'm black. It's you're this person to me. But the interesting part of it is that you were forced to see the color.
Oh yeah, I mean
you had no choice.
I saw the color. I saw the color from the get go. I saw the color.
No, I'm not necessarily specifically talking about you,
yeah.
but just other examples that you would hear from people in interracial relationships. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But regardless, I mean, from what you're saying and from your experience, and we can't put that on everybody else, but you're forced to deal with that.
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, definitely. You, if anything else, if nothing else, you're forced to deal with the fact of how others perceive the color.
Right. Okay,
well,
let's talk about that.
So culturally, Italians stay with Italians, Sicilians stay with Sicilians, and there isn't a lot of mixing. It's frowned upon. It's not something that's obviously it's not supported, right? Historically. Now, me growing up, it's just me and my mom, so there was not an emphasis placed upon her or placed upon me by my mother to say, you are to date this woman and stay away from these women. There was an emphasis to say, yo, these groups of people tend to behave this way, right? And Italians tend to not rock with us. You didn't tell me that when I was a kid. But there was not an emphasis to say, definitely you are forbidden to bring this type of person home. It was always a thing of the person is a good person and that's cool. So
how did your mom respond once you finally, decided you're going to put a ring on her finger and bring her home? How did your mom respond then?
My mom, I mean, she wasn't really thrilled about it. I don't know how much of it is. I don't know how much of it is the color thing. I don't know. My mother's an introvert too. Some of it could have been that this is the new woman. This is the number one woman in my life. My mother's no longer the most important person in my life, or woman. It's not my fiance. That's the most important. You put a ring on her finger. That's saying that she's number one. So,
right. So it was. You think it was the more so the female territorialism than it was the race thing?
It's a mixture. It's tough to say because some of it is that she said to me she felt like she had failed me as a mother. If I went out and got the most opposite woman I could find from her, I went out and found the most agreeable, extroverted, white bread woman I could find that's the polar opposite of my mother. And so she felt like you think that black women are honorary and that we're confrontational and you don't want to deal with that. And my response was that yeah, I mean yes I do think that.
No.
Based
Let her
on my
finish. Let her finish. Let her finish. Okay, your response. Your response. Start there again, Gary. Your response was
yeah,
what?
my response was just yes because based on my experience had largely been with her, with my grandmother, with my aunts. These aren't really calm, you know, normal, think first, relaxed women. They were passionate. They were expressive. A lot of times it could come out negative. Growing up in the 60s and 70s, there wasn't a lot of emphasis on communication. So my experiences with these types of women, and also, even with women my age, girls my age who didn't necessarily care for me like that, I did not have great experiences with black women. Not to say that I've had great experiences with white women as a whole, because white women don't love me either. It's this particular woman loves me, and I messed with this particular woman, and she just so happens to be white.
Now, let me ask this question: do you think a lot of that has to do with the family structure that she came from, coming from a dual parent home? I'm not sure, the experience you had with the black woman that you dated in the past, if they came from dual parent homes or single mother homes or anything like that. But is that something that you think could have had anything to do with, I guess, the attitudes or how you were received by them?
I think 150% that's the case. I think that since I've been an adult, my experiences with black women have been different. 25 and up, let's say, because at that age, I've started to move around more, meet more educated women that come from the dual parent household, and I think the qualities that they see in me might reflect some of the qualities they might see in their dad, and maybe their dad is not an athlete or a swag guy or a pretty boy. And I think I've had a lot more success later on in life with black women, educated. They're coming from single parent, I'm a dual parent, but growing up in Detroit, and with my mom had my grandfather was a great dad, but so he was around in her particular case, but just in my experiences with the girls that I was seeing and dating, then no, none of them had a real fatherly influence in their
right.
Like
so Gary, you know how like her father sat down with you and y'all had a talk, right?
Mm-hmm.
So did your mother ever sit down with your girl and just have a talk with her at all?
They talked the first time they really kicked it. It was very intense. It was a lot of stuff got put out on the table, a lot of fears they both had about each other, and it was a very intense weekend when my mother came to visit. Prior to that, they've had like very surface conversations, how's it going? And my mom will put on like the white voice when she speaks to her.
But the last time she met your mama.
Yeah. The last time they got to know each other, they got some stuff out the way, and it was very intense. It was very rough, but it was necessary. But she hasn't. I mean, she's had some talks with her, had some talks with her mom. I think it's a little bit different because I moved away. I moved out at 18. I've been very independent, so my mother's influence on my life is minimalized in that regard. So I mean, whether obviously I want my mother to be in my life and I love my mother, but if she stands in direct opposition to my relationship, that's not going to affect me like it would my fiance. When her parents stood in direct opposition, that really affected her. Whereas with me, it would affect me. I wouldn't like it at all, but I'm going to do what I want to do as a grown man.
Right, and that has nothing to do with whether your woman was black, white, Puerto Rican, or Asian.
Correct.
Okay. All right. So we got a little bit into the family and the cultural differences. Let's talk about the pluses and the minuses of interracial dating. I guess black woman versus a white woman from your perspective in the actual relationship, just you two.
I think the pluses with dating somebody that's I guess I'll speak from my experience. I think the plus of dating someone that's white, I think you learn. You're with someone, they're occasionally going to take you outside of your comfort zone. You're gonna eat some new foods. You're gonna listen to some new music. You're gonna be around people that you normally would not be comfortable with per se. And some of your stereotypes about people, like for instance, she has some Michigan family, and I'm extra cool with them because they used to live on Dexter. They had a business on 6 Mile. So so this is, you know what I'm saying?
Oh,
so this
wow.
is so we have a lot more in common that way. So I think that's a plus. I think you learn, you get some stereotypes you might have in your head. Some of those are going to tear down. I think some negatives of it. I think a lot of the negatives are going to come externally. It comes from a couple things. Family is one. Being accepted into the family when you're of a different race. I think it's a challenge, obviously, for obvious reasons. Even if people aren't straight up racist, and they might just be apprehensive because they don't really know, what to say, what not to say. If you're dealing with a group of people who are not used to having black people around them, then sometimes they'll be they'll be on their toes, and they'll really, go out of their way to please you, and that makes me uncomfortable too. Because hey, just treat me like a regular guest. I don't want you to go above and beyond just because I'm the only black guy here. Just kind of just be cool. I think on the other way is with friends. I think that if you have a bunch of white friends and you have one black husband or wife or boyfriend or girlfriend or whatever, I think the integration with the friends becomes a problem because the girls or the guys may not gel with this other person who's the outlier. Right. Maybe they don't like the same music, food. They don't, a lot of references they may not get, and so that one person might feel ostracized or judged or unliked because they might not feel like they're a part of this group because they're different.
Right. Because outside of, like you said, outside of that person, you be in a relationship with that person, your friends may not be friends with your friends may not be friends with your fiance if you weren't there, if it was just her, and vice versa. She may not be hanging out with that group of people. So it's just one of those type of things too.
Yeah. I think the main two. Those are the main two minuses are really external. Now, internally, I think it's about as long as you are able to be yourself. Like I'm very comfortable with myself. I talk to my lady like I would talk to my friends a lot of times, and so I don't pull any punches because she's white. She don't pull any punches because I'm black. So we have racial banter. We crack on each other's race. You know what I'm saying? And we're very aware of it, even though we love each other within that. We're very aware of our differences, and we celebrate them. Sometimes it gets us in trouble, but I think that can be a plus and a minus. If you let it divide you, it can be a minus. But I think a lot of times celebrating differences is fun too.
Okay. All right, Gary. Well, before we go, I had one more question, just to jump into the I guess the social aspect of it. We hear a lot of things, a lot of sayings, especially from the black race. The whole go get you a white girl. If you want this, you go get you a white girl.
She gonna do what you tell her to do, and
she go do all that other stuff.
All that stuff.
How do you think those stereotypes for you have really worked out? Do you think that that's those things are true? Like, if you want somebody who just go sit down and shut up, I'm gonna give me a white girl, or is it nah, man? It's just whatever woman that you deal with. It's not. Don't get a white girl expecting it to be like this because that ain't how it's going down.
Yeah, definitely the second one. Women, it's funny because like I'll kick it with Rosie, and she's Sicilian. Then when we go to Florida, we kick it with we got a couple friend and he's Korean and she's German. Then we got black couple that we kick it with. Then we got a Spanish. The dude is Spanish and the woman is Jewish. And then we got an Italian couple. So we'll all sit and kick it and eat dinner together. And when the guys separate and the women separate and we're all talking about our relationships, it's the exact same thing. So you get with a white woman expecting her to just shut up and do what you say. Now, the difference between a white woman, a Spanish woman, black woman might be what they do when they're angry.
So, like the level of violence.
the level of violence, what's going to be their reaction. So maybe the white girl might cry. She might be more likely to cry, and maybe the black girl, if she comes from a single parent household or whatever, she might be more confrontational. But at the end of the day, conflict is conflict. She's gonna be suspicious of any female friends that you have. That's what any woman. She's gonna want to lay up under you, and you're gonna, as a man, you're gonna not want to be laid up under all the time. You're gonna want to maybe watch the game, kick it with your boys. She may not want you to. If you got a good woman, she's gonna have a meal cooked for you, whether she be black, white, or Spanish. Women aren't really that different. It's minor things. But if you get with a white woman thinking that she's just gonna fall back off a jump, or if you get with a black woman thinking that she's gonna be problems off a jump, I think you sell yourself short. You got to really deal with that person's individual.
Wow, that's honest. That sounds honest to me.
Yeah. All right, Gary. Well, I thank you. I want to thank you for giving us a little bit of your time, being so open with us and sharing your relationship. I hope everything continues to go well. I wish you guys nothing but luck on your upcoming marriage and everything like that. And yeah, that's it. Just thank you for coming on the show. Did you have anything that you wanted? If people wanted to get in contact with you, ask you any questions, did you have a name on Twitter account or anything like that?
Yeah, it's on Twitter. You can reach me at 1 Hour Convo on Twitter. That's ONEHOURCONVO. Or you can go to onehourconvo.blogspot.com.
Okay, and what's your just tell us a little bit about what your blog's about, Gary.
The blog's really about any and everything. It's just about the regular everyday topics, from relationships, race. We talk about history. We talk about dynamics of television and culture. It's really kind of anything goes. The premise is to inspire a 1 hour conversation. It's a great read for the beginning of your workday, just to kind of talk amongst coworkers and at least pass 1 hour of your day by.
Wow. How often do you update your blog?
I try to do it 3 times a month.
Okay. That's interesting. So what was the last topic that you had on there?
Last topic was about the dynamics of the Cosby Show and how it ruined families.
Yeah, so
wow.
Yeah, that and I actually did. I was able to check that out. It's a really good conversation that he had on there. So if any of our listeners want a good read, definitely go to that onehourblog.com. That's correct, Gary.
The 1 Hour Convo.
I'm sorry, 1 hour. Yeah, onehourconvo.com and check it out. All right, Gary, man, thanks for coming on tonight.
No problem. West Side.
West Side.